Hi everyone. Today we have um, Brooklyn Myers as our guest, and I hand over the mic to Brooklyn. Hi Brooklyn, can you please
Hi,
introduce us?
Sadesh. Thank you so much for having me. Hello, yeah, my name is Brooklin. I'm already shifting around my slides, so I'm just going to say a little bit about who I am. I am a self-proclaimed Elixir newbie. I've been using Elixir for about a year now, so I still have lots to learn, always learning constantly. I'm also an Elixir instructor at Dockyard Academy and the host of the Elixir Newbie podcast and author of most of the articles that you'll find on elixirnewbie.com. And so today, let me pull open my screen share. Today, I'm going to be talking about using OTP with Livebook. So Livebook is a program that allows you to write interactive code notebooks, so you can have essentially integrated markdown syntax with Elixir cells that allow you to write and execute Elixir code. I've already kind of sorry, I'm getting myself out of order already. So this talk, I'm going to talk about some OTP concepts and cover them using Livebook. This is a completely open format, so feel free to interrupt me to ask questions. As you may already be able to tell, this is a work in progress talk. I'm hoping to present at, or I've been accepted, I should say, so I will be presenting at ElixirConf. So this is kind of a pre-talk to prepare for that. It's going to be a little bit different. Mostly this one focuses on OTP, whereas ElixirConf is going to focus on using Livebook more holistically for teaching, but there's going to be a lot of shared stuff. So all of you get a bit of an early peek at what I'm going to be talking about at ElixirConf. I've already kind of said who I am, so I'm going to skip past that. I've already talked a little bit about Livebook. I will specifically say that in order to use Livebook, you install Livebook on your computer as a program, and then you can essentially run the program, and it's able to read special .livemd files that combine both Markdown and Elixir. If you haven't heard of it before, it's super awesome for documentation. It's great for like exploring and making some kind of an MVP or just writing something up quickly. I've gotten to the point where I prefer using Livebook over the IEX shell because it's just a little bit cleaner and faster to work with. It's also fantastic for education, whether it's inter-team communication, showing how certain things work. You could, have an API explorer or different examples of how to call certain functions, or it's just useful for setting up little examples if you want to talk about something, which I'm going to be doing a lot of. Most of this talk is going to be demonstrative code. Okay, so I'm going to switch up here. If you're curious about any of what I'm showing, all of this is going to be available under my GitHub. If you look at the talks project, you can get access to the Livebook files, so you can run all of this yourself if you want to. Just go to the Livebook GitHub, follow the README, and you can install Livebook on your computer. One of the ways to run Livebook is just running the file that you actually want to execute. Common practice is to have some kind of an index in large Livebook projects, and that way you can organize them. I'll show you what that looks like. Okay. So I'm just going to switch my screen share here. Anyone have any questions about Livebook or anything already? I just want to really open the floor to people as quick as possible. Sandesh, I'm going to need you to be my eyes. If anyone raises their hand, just let me know because I won't have my eyes on the
Yes,
actual.
yes, I will. Yes, I will let you know.
Awesome.
We are good so far.
Okay. So everyone see my screen here? We have a Brave browser. This is what Livebook looks like when we open it on a particular file. So just to kind of demonstrate, we're able to write what are called markdown cells. So you can see my cursor's hovering over this cell here. Underneath it, it's just a markdown. This is how you edit it. And when you're not looking at it, it'll just display the actual markdown itself. We can also have little code blocks. So I can make a code block and I can run and execute some Elixir code. And we're going to be using that to go over Gen server, supervisors, a little bit of ETS stuff, as well as tasks. So with this index, I'm able to link to other .livemd files. It's a good way to kind of break up and organize these projects.
Sorry, can you just make the font a little bit bigger?
Yeah, absolutely. I meant to have
Thank you.
this. Want a little more? Or is that good?
No, that's good. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay. So with these live books, if we want to incorporate external dependencies, Livebook has made a setup section at the top. I'm having a little issue for whatever reason where normally this would be hidden, but that's perfectly fine. It's actually useful to be able to show you this code. So we can just install any dependencies the same that you would in your mix.exs file on a mix project. And so one of the dependencies that is pretty much a staple for everything I do with Livebook is Keno. Keno is kind of a side library to Livebook that goes hand in hand, provides a bunch of conveniences, a bunch of different display tools, and so you're going to be seeing a lot of Keno stuff in this. We can also install local projects, so you can see I can install dependencies using the version number. I could also use a GitHub URL. I don't have an example of that, but I can also install local projects. So I find this incredibly useful if you want to run Livebook alongside a project. You can also run Livebook in essentially, there are different runtime environments. So this is Elixir standalone. Think of it as just raw Elixir. You can also connect it, for example, specifically to different projects. So if I go to the settings here, I can pick Mix Standalone. That's useful if you just have one project that you want to connect it to automatically without that mix.install step. But I find it more handy to include a setup section for most things. Because then it's more predictable. People don't need to know that they have to change the runtime. It tends to just be a little bit smoother. So when I'm building things for the purpose of education, that tends to be my go-to so far. Okay, so we're going to talk about gen servers. To demonstrate how to use gen servers and OTP in Livebook, we're going to have a miner gen server. And what this miner does is the miner digs for gold. This is a literal miner. They're digging in the earth and they are getting gold in a very predictable way. So when we initialize this gen server, we schedule a dig function that is going to continuously loop and call itself over and over and over again. And what it's going to do is every second, it's going to send a dig message to itself that will schedule the next dig message, and that will increment the gold amount. And so if I run this, this is an Elixir cell, I have the ability to run any of this code. I'm going to do so with Control Enter. I could also press the evaluate button up here. So you can see I created the gen server. We have our return value. We have the PID. And because I bound it to this variable, I'm able to show that we are, in fact, incrementing this state. Now, it's not live. So you can see I have to reevaluate this every time I want to run that function and get the current state value. But you can see that this is, in fact, running. And it is incrementing its internal gold value. Now, one of the potential pitfalls of using OTP processes in general, it's not just gen servers, it's all processes, is that you're essentially rerunning all of this code every time you reevaluate the cell, which means that we're actually creating a new process every time we evaluate the cell. So if I show our process count right here, we have 94 processes currently running. If I reevaluate this miner, create a new one, if I run the state, you'll see that now we're actually looking at the next process created. So the gold has reset back to 0, but I have 95 processes. If I run this 3 times more, 2, 3, I should have 98 processes, right? And so it's very easy within a Livebook context to lose track of the processes that you've created. If at any time you get into a bad state because of that, if that causes potential issues, you can just disconnect the environment using this button here. I often just use the 00 keyboard shortcut to quickly do that. You can see that when I do that, it aborts all processes. And then when I reevaluate all of these, so that's reevaluated, now I'm back to 94 processes. So that's a good way to get yourself out of a bad state if you're ever using OTP in a Livebook context. This does pose some issues with named processes. So anytime you have a named process, the first time you start it, it'll be completely fine. So now I have a miner, does the exact same thing that we just saw, except now it is starting under a name. So we're going to have miner gym as our gen server. So when I start it the first time, it's perfectly fine. But if I start it a second time, so this is me reevaluating it, you can see that we get an error because it has already started. So most of the time, that's not really a huge problem, so long as you don't have any other code. So if I had some other stuff that I wanted to do after this start link, that could be an issue. But if I start the gen server in the cell that it's defined, for the most part, it shouldn't cause any issues because it'll just rerun and nothing else will be affected. If it's really a problem and we really want to be able to start that gen server over without any issues, what we can do is we can add a flag to trap that process. And that way the terminate callback will be run. And so we can safely kill that process for the normal reasons. So this way we just find our, so for this one, I have a trapped miner. We find the trapped miner process if it exists. If it exists, then it will send a message to shut down that process. It does need a little bit of time to terminate. So I just wait for 0.1 seconds, and then we start over. So you'll see the first time, no terminate callback will be called because it's the very first time starting it, and this is going to be false, which is normally. But if I reevaluate this, there will be an existing PID, and so it will call the terminate callback, sorry, and you can see that it ran the contents here. So that's a good way if you want to continuously reevaluate a named gen server. Again, most of the time it's not going to be a problem, but this is one of the workarounds that I found.
Okay, so the count is going to remain same because
Yes.
of traffic bit.
That's right, because we're killing the process, and so this way, no matter how many times I run this, we're not increasing the number of processes that exist. This is remaining as 96. Awesome.
Awesome.
So there are a few different solutions. One is what I've already said, which is just write any affected code in a different cell, start the named gen server in its own Elixir cell, and then you're not going to have any issues. You can also use an unlinked process. So here using start instead of start link, and that way it doesn't crash the parent process if you try to kill it. Because if you crash the parent process, you're actually crashing Livebook itself, and you affect the entire execution. I'll have some examples of that later if that doesn't make sense. But here we can do the same thing. I have a bill miner. I've configured this miner so that I can just pass in the name custom, and it doesn't have to be the module. And this time when we process exit, it will essentially do the exact same thing where it checks if this exists and it kills it safely. There's no terminate callback this time because this is our original miner, just showing that we can also start it without a start link and exit it safely. Okay, so let's talk about supervisors. We're going to take this concept of having multiple different miners and we're going to start them all under a supervisor. This is just defining those miners. These are exactly the same as what we've seen so far. They just all have different names, miner 1, 2, and 3. But first, I want to talk about some of the problems with supervisors within Livebook. So when we are starting our supervisor, we have the exact same problem that if we have a named supervisor, it will already be running in our Livebook environment. So if I run this the first time, it's perfectly fine. But if I run it a second time, you'll see that we get an error already started. A gen server is actually less of a problem because it will update, but with a supervisor, that's a bigger issue. Because if I want to change the children under the supervisor, so I'm just going to put a minor process under the supervisor, it actually won't update. So we can see when I run which children before evaluating, I have an empty list because that's what we started with. If I reevaluate this cell, we want the supervisor to update and have children, but unfortunately it doesn't. So we can see the same reverse. I'm going to disconnect the environment. You can see we've aborted our execution. This time I'll start it with a child so that we can just see what it looks like when it does have a child. Cool. So we can see in its children, it has a minor process. Same thing. If I comment that out, attempt to restart it, it still has the minor children. And so the workaround I found for this is just to find the supervisor process and stop it. And this way you can continuously restart your supervisor without it being a problem. So when I run this here and I look at the children, we have an empty list. If I change its children, rerun it, look at the children, now I have the minor. So this is a way if you want a supervisor and you want to be able to manipulate it and update it without stopping the entire environment, This is a way that you can do that. Now, to be fair, it's pretty fast to stop the runtime, and if you know what to expect, just quickly stopping it and then restarting it most of the time is not a problem. But if you have a large live book or many different demonstrations and examples and you want them to be kind of rerunnable, this is one of the ways to get around it. This is a pattern we're going to see a lot of. Okay, so now let's talk about the actual cool parts of Livebook. We've gotten around some of the kind of bugs that occur. Now this code has some context and makes sense. So we're going to see some of the cool stuff that we can do with Livebook. So now we have a more complicated supervision tree. This has our 3 minors that we defined before in it. They're all named gen servers. And then we're also going to have a dynamic supervisor under it.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that Livebook is like coding a complete app in IEX, but with a lots of different bells and whistles to see how it works without sketching a full app?
That is definitely one way you can use it, for sure. Yeah. Is you can have raw Elixir cells, a bunch of different examples. You could even connect it to a side project, which I'll show in a second. And so one of the ways to use it is exactly that, as kind of a way to write some Elixir code, experiment with it, see the output. It's like one big, long, continuous kind of IEX shell, except a lot more convenient, because if you're using IEX, you have to write it line by line.
Yes.
It's not so easy to manipulate and rerun. And so, yeah, does that answer the question?
Yep, it does. Perfect. Thanks.
Awesome. My pleasure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, we should use Livebook for our next meetups, and that will make work easier. So
Yes,
that's
awesome.
definitely.
That's exactly what I want to hear. It's remarkably useful. I actually didn't know much about it when I first started. It's only when I started doing Dockyard Academy that I really looked into Livebook a lot. And now I use it day to day, where even when I'm just coding something up, it's much faster than using the IEX shell. If I want to just make a quick experiment, I want to explain some concept, pop open a Livebook server, make a new notebook, and then open up a code cell. It's super, super useful. So I highly recommend that everyone try to get running after this meetup. That's ultimately my goal, is to get all of you really excited about Livebook and how it can help you learn OTP. Okay. Awesome.
Yes. Okay.
So we have our example here. This is a more complex supervisor. And one of the cool things we can do with Keno is we can actually visualize our supervisor. So if I start the supervisor, and then we use this keno.process.supervisor tree function, this allows us to visualize any supervisor using a mermaid diagram. So we can see our original supervisor is called mine supervisor. Then we have a dynamic supervisor called minor supervisor. And the cool thing is this will continuously update. So if there's a dynamic supervisor and I start a child under that, so this is just starting a blank minor process under the minor supervisor. If I reevaluate this, now we have a process under this. If I add 2 more and reevaluate it. So if you want to visualize how your application is working, or you want to understand your supervision tree, this is a great way to just wrap whatever your named supervision tree is in this function. And it lets you visualize it. I heard a Bing sound. Was that the chat? Does someone have a question?
We have a question.
Yeah. So this is awesome. Just one thing. Can we also open Mix project directly in Livebook and play with the things?
Yes.
With some module within that. Okay, great.
Yes. So I'm going to show some examples of that later on in here. So absolutely, yes, you can, whether it's a remote project, like you're adding it on GitHub, or, for example, Keno is actually running in this. Keno is installed as a dependency. I can actually, sorry. So there's an app tree function.
That's awesome. Thanks. Thank you.
You can wrap your project in. And that will actually show you the supervision tree of basically any application. So I'm going to show more examples of that. I'm kind of giving you a bit of a teaser. Mine supervisor. Cool thing we can do, by the way, in Keno is we can add animations. So it'll continuously call itself on an interval, and then you can have some kind of visual that's constantly updating and changing. So I made a little example that actually continuously animates this diagram so that it's live updating, because before you saw I had to reevaluate it each time. That gave me the idea while I was preparing this of, hey, what if I animated it? I also have a little bit more info where I've added like what children are under each supervisor. So if I run this, we have the exact same thing here. We also have the number of children. And if I start new ones, boom, it's live updating. Even add it with, let's say, a name. I hope I spell your name right, Sandesh. I don't have it in front of me. Is
Yeah, it's correct.
that right? Okay. There you go. So we can see that that Sandesh process was added under our tree. That's a neat way to kind of get live insight into how your supervision tree is working. And these animations are super, super simple. This is all the code that handles rendering this tree. It's just this part here. So animation's super, super simple within a Livebook or Keno context.
Okay, we have a question.
Absolutely. Go for it.
Yeah, I wanted to ask if Keno is only for Livebook or can we use it in IEX as well?
That's a good question. I mean, at its core, I'm not sure, to be honest. I've never tried that. I'm sure there are some functions run from it if you installed it as a dependency. If you're thinking like, hey, can I display this inside of my project? I think you could get insight into how to do it, but I don't believe it would work directly. I don't think that you can use, because it requires a Livebook instance to be running. I don't think it's designed to be used outside of Livebook. That said, this is a library called Mermaid that you can add into projects. This is something that could be coded up, but I don't think it would be quite so direct. Could be an interesting project though. Maybe that'll be a good good one to do. By the way, kind of a random shout out. I run a group on Saturdays that is a hackathon, a little mini hackathon every week. So we code some open source thing together. That could be an excellent pitch, is to make some kind of a diagram for these types of mermaid things. Everyone here, if you're interested in that group, message me after. I'll give my email at the end of this. If people want to get a hold of me, you can also find me on Twitter, if that interests you at all. Okay.
Yeah, that works for us also.
Cool. So I also want to show this will live update if we kill. This sounds horrible. If we kill the children. So let's grab a random PID. Let's say 327. So this is just a function to create a PID 327, and then we're going to terminate a child under our supervisor. And we can see that live updated. So we killed the process. We can do that with 326. But even as we are, this is a nice way to kind of visualize, a lot of these concepts feel ethereal. Like when you're thinking of a supervisor, it's hard to like feel like it's real because it's all kind of just code. But this lets you get that insight into, hey, how is this supervisor working? What happens if I stop this process? Or, and because we're calling terminate child, we're not restarting these processes. We are actually ending them. Now we could restart them. So unfortunately here, I'm just going to move this example up a little bit so that we can see it live. So if I attempt to kill 325, what was the restart strategy on this dynamic supervisor? Does anyone remember? I'll answer. It was a 1-for-1. So what does 1-for-1 strategy mean for a supervisor? What happens if one of our processes crashes in a 1-for-1 strategy? Does anyone remember?
Yeah, another one gets started.
Supervisor starts that, right?
Yeah.
And
So
only
1-for-1,
that process.
so that one process would be restarted. Yeah, you got it. Nice. So what's going to happen when I kill process 325? And this time it's killing it in such a way that it will be restarted. Any predictions on what this diagram is going to show?
New process
Probably-
started with different PID.
Yeah,
Killing this
you
one.
got it. You got it. So if I kill this, boom, we can see it went 362. I'll kill that one as well, just to show that they increment. 363. So you can actually get insight. Now, if I change the restart strategy, for example, and made this an all-for-one, is that the right term? The one where, I sometimes forget the terminology, but the one where if you if one crashes, all of them get restarted. We can actually visualize that and see the PIDs changing.
I think that is rest for one, right?
Rest for one is like the
No,
domino effect. So that's where they get killed in order, right?
Okay.
rest for one is for sequence.
I think it's one for all.
One for one is where one gets restarted. I think it's. Do we need to check the supervisor documentation? I think I do.
One for all, I think.
One for all. I think you're right. Let me look for one for all. Yes, one for all. Thank you. I couldn't remember the name of it, just what it did. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so back to our question about can we visualize applications. I actually have a side application in this project. If you install this Livebook, it will come with the project, and it's called Factory. So we can see at the top when we install our dependencies. Oh, cool. Now I have the little setup section. When we installed our dependencies, I installed an application called Factory. It's kind of a more complex example of our minor example, and we just give the path to the local project. If this were on GitHub, I could give the GitHub URL. You can install dependencies just as you would in mix.exs. Okay. So going back to our app supervision trees. Also nice thing about Livebook, I have a little explorer here that lets me go up and down to all my different sections. So if I run this, see that I have a factory application. It has a factory.supervisor. It has the kind of same premise, dynamic miner supervisor. Now we have a regular miner supervisor under it that has a gold miner, iron miner, and a silver miner. And then we have a factory.storage process. So I'm not going to talk too much about what this does because the goal is to show how you can get insight into how these projects work without even looking at the code necessarily. So we're going to get some insight into how this works without diving into the code of it. We can also, app tree is convenient, but it does include two processes that I believe, I haven't tested this, but I believe exist within Livebook. So to kind of trim the fat and just look at the application, we can also call supervisor tree with just factory.supervisor. So this just shows that part of it. We're going to do the exact same thing with our animation, so we can show this live. And I've also done some sys.getState code around this to kind of provide insight into how all these processes work, what their state is, and we can get an understanding. So we also have the ability to render Markdown within these animations using Keno.markdown. And I get some information about the dynamic supervisor using which children. Okay. Oh, it's already been running the entire time that this has been open, so it's a little further along in the process. But you can see that what this is doing is the gold miner, iron miner, and silver miner are all continuously digging for ore, gold, silver, and iron. Once they get 10, kind of their inventory is full, is how I think about it. And then they send the contents of it to factory.storage. Now, when you asked before, hey, can we play with a project that's installed, like a local project? Yeah, absolutely. We can call, we have access to all of the modules from that function, from that project. So here I have a dynamic miner supervisor. This is directly coming from our factory project. That's this module right here. See, right now it doesn't have any children. So if I start a new factory.iron miner under it, see that that has been started as a process. Do that a few more times. You see it's live updating to show it. So we can visualize, hey, like how does our project work? How does our dynamic supervisor work? And you can see that these are also incrementing now kind of at their own pace, all one every second. And now they're sending different amounts of content. So our factory storage is beginning to get uneven because we're mining more iron than anything else.
I have a question. Can you scroll up a little bit in the code? A little. Yeah, wait here. So in one of your previous meetups, we had a discussion or confusion. Supervisor versus dynamic supervisor. Like, would you like to add some point when to use supervisor versus when to use dynamic supervisor?
Yeah, so in this case, supervisor is for when the children are known. So you know what children you want under your supervisor ahead of time. You know, in this case, I have 3 named processes. You'll see a factory.goldminer, factory.ironminer, and factory.silverminer. Dynamic is if there's any circumstance where you want a bunch of supervised processes, but you don't know what they're going to be ahead of time, and you want to be able to dynamically create them. So maybe you have a bunch of processes that'll do some work, and they're not suitable for a task for whatever reason. They need, state, for example, so it needs to be a gen server that runs. But you want to be able to like start a new one for, let's say, every single user, or on command somehow. So that's when you would use dynamic, because you want to be able to start processes dynamically, whereas a regular supervisor is more static. The children it has are the children it has. You can see I could not call this function, which dynamically adds a child under the supervisor. I couldn't do that with a regular supervisor. That's not what it's for. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Awesome. Cool. Now, context on like
Brooklyn, one
when
question.
is a business example? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I have one question. So how the supervisors keep state inside the Livebook? I mean, like, since we are incrementing counter and everything, right? So we have the data. So how the particular state of the data is maintained? I mean, it's internally stored in somewhere files or something like that, or database?
So it's all in memory.
When we
So a
say-
gen server state is stored in memory. There's no long-term persistence for it. And you can see that essentially what it's doing, actually, this is a good example here. Essentially what it's doing is we have a Livebook process. That's, I believe, what PID 239 and 240 are. And then it is running the supervisor underneath of a process. So this is actually, I want to say a gen server. All I know is for sure is that it's definitely a process. And then it's starting the supervisor under it. And so we can actually see that if I call application controller which applications, we can see which applications are available in this environment. So we can see we have my little factory app that I made for demonstration purposes. We have Keno, we have Logger, some other stuff. And if I call, for example, this, oh, actually not that, I want our app tree function. If I call Keno process app tree, I already showed it with Keno, we can see, oh, let me actually double check. I just want to see if those processes updated. They're different processes. I didn't unfortunately have enough time to check out why exactly these are here. I believe they're started by Livebook though. But we can see that we have some processes and then the supervisor under them. Essentially, Livebook is starting its own process and then starting all of these dependency supervisors underneath of that process. And so all of this is in memory. We can even get some insight into the amount of memory that we're consuming inside of Livebook, which is pretty cool. Does that answer the question? Or did I misunderstand?
Yeah. So in case, like, if you want to preserve the state of particular process, right? For example, like in the earlier example, you killed one process and restarted it, right? So if I want to, somewhere store the state of the process or something like that, like, for example, if I'm passing JSON in one particular child or maybe 2 or 3. So if I kill due to some particular reason and restart it, so it will start from the beginning, right? Of processing.
Yep. So if you wanted long-term persistence, right? A gen server is always going to be short-term persistence. It's in memory. If you want long-term persistence, whether you're backing up a gen server or whatever, you have a few options. Livebook can actually connect to a database. So I don't have any demos of this, unfortunately, but they just added a feature called Smart Cells, which allows you to connect to a Postgres database. You could make queries, like SQL queries, even from within the Livebook. So if you wanted to connect to a database, for example, or if our factory project had a database, we could call like our context functions that get data out of the database directly. So that's another way you could, is if your side project had some kind of a database that it connects to, it would also start up that database as part of installing it. Yeah, hopefully that. Oh, the other thing you do have, if you just want like a super fast, simple persistence, is you could use the file system. So you can call the file module directly. You could, now obviously file, not a great database, but if you're just quickly persisting something, that's another way you can get long-term persistence. I heard a ding.
Yeah, are we able to, are we going to show ETS today?
Are we going to show what, sorry?
We had a discussion of our ETS. So like, I'm not sure, are you going to show ETS today? ETS with Livebook?
I do have some ETS examples. It depends on how, I think I'm already short for time. I'm shocked how fast the time is going. I think I have, what, 20 minutes left?
Okay. Please
So
continue.
I'll try to get to ETS as quick as I can. I do have some ETS examples. So I'll try to power through this. We have our application controller. Just want to show you can also control the direction of these tables. Another question?
Yeah, so for the persistence, we could also use EDS also, right?
That's also in memory. So that's table. Now, unless you're
Okay.
using, I haven't used DETS, DETS. I believe that's disk-based. So maybe that would be another option. But ETS is also in memory, unless you configure it otherwise somehow. Okay. So just want to show you can control the direction. So getting an app tree of the kernel itself. So all the cool stuff happening under the hood with Elixir. It's kind of bigger, so a top-bottom table doesn't work as well. So you can set the direction of these. Last kind of cool thing, I'm not going to dive too deep into it. Oh, this became a markdown cell. Is we can also start the observer from Livebook. This will work. Oh, I'm not sharing it, so you might not actually see the observer. Okay, well, I wanted to race to ETS anyway, so I'm not going to play around with it too much, but just know that you can start the observer. We can see all of the same processes that we were running in here. It shows kind of our entire system. If I have time, I might circle back to that, but I want to get to ETS. Okay, ETS tables. So we have the same issues with ETS as we do with all processes, is that if we try to create them twice, we get issues because it already exists. It's a named table. It already exists. For the most part, that's not going to be a problem, so I'm just going to start them in their own cell, and it's perfectly fine. I will show a way that I found to handle that. This may be a little bit more unintuitive than the other ways. Keno does provide, this is pretty cool, the ability to visualize these tables. So I have our ETS table. Right now it doesn't have anything in it. If I insert into that table, and we have this little refresh button here, we can see the values that are inside of our table. So great way of playing around with them and just understanding, hey, what's in here. For resetting them, this code isn't quite as intuitive as all the other methods where we kind of stop and start them. I'm looking for a better way. So far, this is the best way I've found, which is to just delete all of the objects inside of the table. So you're essentially refreshing it every single time. So if I reevaluate this, I put something into it, refresh button, you can see the key values here. Now if I reevaluate it, there's nothing in the table. So that's a way of making kind of a resetting table if you want to be able to restart. It's not really restarting the process, it's actually deleting everything inside of it. But if you want to be able to clean the contents, basically. Okay, so let's use this to explore some different ETS configurations. This is to demonstrate how Livebook can make things feel a bit more intuitive with real examples. So here I have a bunch of different examples of all the different configuration options we have for ETS. Set, ordered set, bag, duplicate bag, protected, public, and private. And I'll see how far I can get in these because I think I am running low on time. I want to leave some time at the end for questions. So here we're creating a set table. And with this one, set tables don't allow duplicate keys. So when I send all of these different messages to the table and insert values inside of them, and then refresh, we can see that all of these got in because all the keys are unique. Only the last one of these is the current value because it essentially inserts it and then updates and updates and updates and updates. So you can see that we only have one of the duplicate keys inside of it. And I just wanted to also show it with an atom key because sets do not guarantee term ordering at all. That's what an ordered set will be for, and we'll see the difference in a moment. We have bag. Bag does allow duplicates, so when we send all of our duplicate values, you see that this time, even though they have the same key, we have different values, so they're fine. Now, what it won't do with bag is it doesn't accept duplicate values, so there's only one unique value per key, but there can be many, sorry, I should say, you can have many unique values per key. So it allows duplicates, but not duplicate values. We can see the difference in duplicate bag, where when I start this up, in the messages, you can see this time, now we're allowed to have duplicate values. So these are all different ways of configuring ETS depending on our use case. We have ordered set. So this orders according to Elixir term order, which if you need a reference, number, atom, references, functions, ports, PIDs, tuples, lists, bit strings. So depending on what the key value is, it will order them differently. So when we start up this table and we send essentially the same messages as we did to our set table, we can see that now they are in fact in order. Whereas before with our set table, sorry, I didn't stick there too long. With our set table, they were completely out of order, no guarantees. But with our ordered set, they are ordered. And you can see, I don't know how much y'all have gone over ETS, but the great thing about Livebook is being able to visualize these, and it just gives more tangible insight into how these things work. Whereas when you're working with data, it'd be kind of hard to set this up. You know, I find this is just a really good demonstration tool.
We had a talk about amnesia, and most of us are considering to use amnesia for making multiple nodes and connecting them, experimented.
Very cool. Awesome. Okay, I'll finish this up with some of our read-write options. Unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to get to tasks today, which is too bad. I had some really cool demonstrations for tasks. I should have managed my time a little better. In fact, would we like to go through the rest of private, public, and protected ETS, or do we want to jump to tasks? What is this group more interested in?
+1 for task, I think.
+1 for task?
Yeah, we can jump to tasks.
Okay, all right. Let's do tasks then, because I have some cool stuff there. So for the most part, tasks behave as you would expect from a Livebook. We can run them, await them. It waits until the execution of the task finishes when we await them. So they're working the same way. We can do timeouts. So when the task takes too long, the default timeout is 5 seconds. So it will have an error. I think you all have already looked at yield. So we can see that after 5 seconds, it attempts to yield and returns nil. And then after 7 seconds, it does return OK result. Now, this is the cool part. So tasks, kind of as expected, task supervisors. This is where we can get some insight into our task supervisor using similar strategies to what we did before. So when we start the supervisor, we can put a 10-second task under that supervisor. Normally, if you wanted to kind of visualize that, you could use task supervisor.children and just get the list of PIDs inside of the supervisor. After 10 seconds or so, it will disappear because it's only running for 10 seconds. But we can use that same Keno process supervision tree with our task supervisor. So now I don't have anything under there, so it just animates nothing. But now if I start a task under it, I'm using no link because I'm also going to shut them down, and I don't want to crash Livebook. Now, when I add these, you can see that they are dynamically animating our tree. We can shut them down, so task.shutdown, this just grabs the last task, because right now the task variable is bound to the last one that we created. So if I try to shut it down, it'll shut the last one down, but this won't work if I try to run it again, because now this task is still bound to the same task that we just shut down. I can, however, terminate them manually. So if I run this again, 279, you see I can manually shut them down as well by terminating them. Now this one's kind of fun. This is the one I really wanted to get to before we end. I'm just going to have another animation with the exact same thing, just so it's close. We can visualize task clusters. So right here, I have 10 tasks that I'm creating. They each sleep for a varying amount of time, anywhere from 10 seconds to 1 second. So it'll be one task that takes 1 second, one task that takes 2 seconds, et cetera, until we get to 10 seconds. And we can visualize these. So if I run it, you can see all of them, and every second, one of them is ending. So if you have some kind of complex task supervision tree, you can watch them in action as they're being created and finish. I can even run it multiple times. I can't run it multiple times right now because I'm awaiting them, but if I comment that out, what I did want to show is when they end, you can see how the await many actually works, is it's waiting for all of those tasks to complete, and then they just return their order. So right here, I can also keep creating them. And we can just go absolutely nuts with it.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Right? Very cool way to visualize this stuff. Make it feel a little bit more intuitive. Okay. All right. I think that was about the time I wanted to spend. So I think we're pretty perfect for time. We have 10 minutes for questions and such, or if there's anything y'all do at the end of your sessions. Just kind of the takeaways that you can use Livebook to gain insight into your OTT processes or alongside existing applications. You can use it to quickly develop OTP experiments. It's a great development environment. And you can save examples for yourself in the future. So it's super nice to be able to look back at your Livebooks if you are saving them, so that you can go, hey, like, how did I do that again? And oh, right, this is how. As you've seen, it's also good for documenting projects or for teaching other devs. So if you have some concepts that you want to go over, it's a great way to set up an environment where, like I said, all of you are able to go through this later. I'm going to give you the GitHub link. I'll give it to Sandish, and maybe he can make it available somehow.
Yes, I will pass to the group.
Awesome. So it's a great way to maybe document your project, show examples of how things work, and make it more live. Okay, awesome. Talk over. I think I've taken 90% of the mouth doing process. So why don't we open the floor to everyone else? Anyone have questions or comments that came up?
No questions as such, but this is definitely interesting. I'm gonna have to find time and play with it. I mean, when you started showing the visualization of processes and how the animation changes, it just clicked a bulb, a light bulb. Like, oh, so that is how you can actually see how your processes are working. It's also making a great teaching tool when you're trying to talk about processes to somebody. You can just show it to them and say, this is how it's going to work.
Yeah. Yeah, we have Alex Kutmos to thank for that new visualization tool. I believe he's also making a, it's essentially, what do they call it? I can't remember the name of the diagram, but he's making a new type of diagram for visualizing processes and sending messages. So you can actually trace your processes as they're doing actions. It says like, oh, sending a message here, sending a message there. Yeah.
So is it a fair comparison between Observer and the animation that we have just seen, or no, they're two different things?
Is there a comparison between the Observer and what we just saw? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, it's nearly identical, except the Observer is not live.
No.
If I can, I'm actually just going to see if I can get the Observer running while we're talking, and maybe I can show off the similarities. But while I'm doing that, does anyone have other questions?
So just had this question in my head. Let's say you're running a Phoenix project, and you want to maybe animate or via Keno live track the state of your connection, or maybe just see what's in my connection as it passes around, and while I move around the pages, and what happens to my connection. Or maybe I want to do something on it, so that should be possible in Keno.
Yep. Yeah, there's no reason that you couldn't connect this to a Phoenix project or some other mixed project. Some projects have configuration. That means while it's still possible, there might be some technical challenges involved. I haven't yet tried to connect it to a Phoenix project. So that's something I'm hoping to play around with, because I think you'd have to do some stuff with it. But there's no reason that it shouldn't be possible. So if you wanted to see, hey, like, how is my Phoenix project working? That'd be a great way to do it. Can everyone see the Observer?
Yep.
So I just wanted to show that you can start the Observer from Livebook. It does show everything that we were running before. So we have Keno, we have our factory. So we can visualize these things as well. The animations are kind of nice, though, because I can't actually, oh, that opens up a new thing. Well, I'll just say you can get insight into the state of these processes, but you have to continuously hit the refresh button. You're not seeing it live and animated.
Yeah, I think I see the benefit, because live view is being instantly responsive, versus for Observer, you would have to manipulate the processes from either the terminal, or you have to manually delete and then refresh.
Exactly. Those animations make it really nice. Now, sometimes animations are very performance intensive, so you do have to be considerate about not crashing things. But we saw that I had a table with many processes that was constantly updating, and it was handling it mostly fine.
Okay, I have a question. Is Keno dependent on observer? And I'm asking because and many times I have experienced observer does not start because it has some dependency of Erlang.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
is my
I've encountered the same issue. I'm a Windows user most of the time. I use WSL, and I don't believe Observer works out of the box with that. This is not dependent on Observer as far as I'm aware. So it is something that you should be able to run without issue. If you do have issues, send me a message, and maybe I can help you configure it.
for the Mac, if I download Erlang from Erlang Solutions package, then Observer works, but it has problems with another things of ASDF. It is difficult to configure. And if I install from ASDF, if I install Erlang from ASDF, then this Observer does not start.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what is happening with your specific situation. I'd have to like run through and debug it to know. But at the very least, Livebook is not dependent on the observer. So you should have no issues. As long as you can run Livebook, then you should be fine.
We have another question.
One question I have is that let's say we connect our Livebook to normal mix project with the supervisor and an application.ex file. Simple project, no Phoenix, nothing. So and let's say there are some configs of maybe S3 uploads or something. So are those runtime things available in Livebook also? Like that config is available in Livebook also?
I don't know if I 100% understand the question. Maybe I can answer it, but you might have to clarify it for me. And maybe
Okay,
I'm misunderstanding.
so let's say I have a config.exs in my mix project, which is not a Phoenix project.
Yeah.
And I have defined, maybe my AWS keys there, and I might want to access them in my Livebook. So if I connect my Livebook to my mix project, would I be able to access it?
That's a really good question. So because it's not, I would have to try. I'd have to try. I think so, because you should be able to access it based off of, like, it's running. It is actually running within Livebook. Have access to the application. So theoretically, I want to say yes, but I'd have to actually try it to see what's possible, as well as if it were like a secret thing, like if it's not in GitHub and it's ignored, I'm not 100% sure if that would work. You might have some like you might not even be able to install the dependency, because I'm not sure if it would automatically get that stuff. Definitely it wouldn't if it's from a remote, from a local maybe, but I'm not sure. So yeah, all of these kinds of things with projects can mean that it's difficult to get it running with Livebook. I'd recommend, if you are going to try this, try something simple first, and then get into the complexity of, okay, now I want to run it with this project. There's all sorts of different things that would need to connect to. All of those will pose their own challenges, but theoretically it should be possible.
Definitely with something simple. So thanks. That's like simple to complex is a nice way to approach a problem. At least we know what's working and what isn't. So
yes, yeah, get it working simple. Solve the simple problem before you solve the hard one. That is a good lesson. Sandesh.
So far we have covered topics till Gen server, and today the supervisor. We aim to also teach Gen stage. Can we use Gen stage with Livebook, or have you tried Gen stage with Livebook?
So I want to say yes, you can, because it's a dependency you can add and you can run it. So there's no reason that you shouldn't be able to. I have not actually used Gen stage yet. I haven't used it at all, let alone within a Livebook context, but that's definitely something I'd love to see tried. So if any of you do try that, I'd love to, if it's a public repo or whatever, I would love, if you don't mind, to share that with me, because
yes, we will share.
Theoretically, you should be possible, but I don't know much about Gen stage. I did, by the way, just so everyone does have it, I added the link to my GitHub that has all of the files for this talk. as well as a link to Livebook. So if you want to install it, all of the instructions are there on the README. Their website recently got rid of the command line instructions, which I don't personally like. I don't actually want to run Livebook as like an app. And it also took out instructions for Linux users. Now it only has Windows and Mac. So I don't know what happened there. So I recommend going to the README for installation. I like running the latest as well. If you scroll down, you can get the actual Livebook main version as opposed to running like a released version. It's a little bit more experimental, of course, but you get some cool features and you get it before everyone else. So I like using the main branch. My email is also there, brooklyn.myers@dockyard.com. You can also find me at Brooklyn Jazz on Twitter. If any of you do want to reach out, I'm always happy to talk.
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, Sandesh, go ahead.
Yeah, can we brand Livebook with our name, and can we change colors?
I've been looking into that. Right now is the answer is I don't believe there's an easy way to do it. My hope is that that becomes easy because we'd like to do the same thing ourselves. So that's something that we're going to be attempting to push. I know that they're coming out with, well, I don't know the specifics. I believe they're working on like not a pro version of Livebook, but I think they are working on some like extended versions. So maybe it'll come out with that. Currently, that's not easy, but I'm hoping that they add that feature because that would be really nice.
Yeah, that is going to be helpful for the creators, original creators.
Exactly. Yeah. Abhishek, did you have a question?
Yes, just one. I was curious about your Saturday meetups. I mean, if you could, highlight a couple of bit more. I mean, maybe take 2 minutes and tell.
Yeah, I'll add in the chat now. I'm just opening up. It's a Discord group, so you need Discord to join. Other than that, it is completely open. It's Saturdays at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time. I don't know what that is for all of your time zones, but right now is right now it's 10:30, so it would be right now, but on Saturday. So let me just grab the invite link. I'm going to post that in the chat. So if anyone wants to follow that link on Discord, if anyone needs it after, just send me a message. Again, find me on Twitter. Get in touch with Sandesh. He knows how to contact me. Add me on LinkedIn, whatever is the best method for you. And I can get you in there if you don't join right now. But hey, the link's in chat. You can join right now if you want. And people will say hello. It's a good group.
Do we have a few more minutes, Brooklyn?
I have as much time as you need right now. I don't have anything right after.
I would like to know more. Can you tell us more about Dockyard Learning? What is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, I'm the instructor and content creator for Dockyard Academy. Dockyard Academy is an Elixir bootcamp / academy. It's going to be like a 3-month classic intensive program. Going to be working, full time with me directly. It goes through the Dockyard curriculum is created completely in Livebook, so it's more lessons just like this, all fully interactive, so that as you're learning the concepts, you can experiment with them, try them. It's aimed towards more beginner developers, and it works its way up through the skill level. So if you want to join yourself, because all of you are fairly experienced, it might start a little easy, but eventually it'll kind of get harder and get more complex. Right now, I am looking for people who want to beta test it. It is, it's still a work in progress. We're about 5 months away from launch. I believe we're thinking about launching towards the tail end of December. So we're still several months out from doing a full launch. Right now, it's just in beta. It's totally public and open, though. So if you want to look at the curriculum, here, I'll give another link to the Dockyard Academy curriculum. There's also opportunities for open source work on it. So if any of you want to contribute, whether it's spell checking or adding in some content or whatever it is, there's opportunities there.
So this is a part of Dockyard Consulting, the teaching arm, so to say?
Yeah, exactly. So there's
Okay.
Dockyard, and then Dockyard has started Dockyard Academy, which is going to help people learn Elixir. And the goal is to get more talent into the community. And there's going to be, hiring help afterwards, and so it's to help people kind of get Elixir work.
Awesome.
As far as I'm aware, it's the only Elixir bootcamp. That might not be true. I know that there are some other places working on them, but I believe right now it's going to be the only Elixir bootcamp.
Yeah, it is going to be Dockyard Academies is going to be great one because it also has Boban and lot of tools. I have gone through the curriculum. It looks awesome. It looks detailed also.
Awesome. I appreciate that, Sandesh. Let me know if you have any feedback.
Like if we have something if we have some discount in fees for the like we have differences in currency.
Mhm.
So
so the business side of things is still in flux and kind of being determined. I'll know more when we're actually closer to launch. I believe, like, don't quote me on this because it might change, but I believe there will be reduced rates, opportunities for the first cohort in particular, because it's going to be our first cohort. You know, we're still working out the bugs. You know, benefit of the first cohort, you're getting a lot of hands-on attention because we are still working things out, and you know, lots and lots of one-on-one time with me. But of course, first cohort, so we're still going to be working out the bugs. But I believe there will be opportunities for reduced fee if prices a factor for anyone as well. It is a totally so the teaching part is obviously paid because that's going to be pretty much a full-time job for me, where we're spending, I believe, 6 hours a day at a lunchtime in between. So it's like a full-time opportunity. But if you just want to go through it on your own, it's completely free, open source. The curriculum itself, you can go through. If you have questions, you can always raise issues on there. There's an associated Discord for that group. So if as you're going through it, you want to get help and ask questions, right now that Discord is going to be open. At some point, it probably won't be once we actually launch. So this is kind of your opportunity to get in there now. And I can, provide resources for that. So send me an email if you're interested in beta testing. I'll set up a one-on-one chat with you. We'll do a video call to just kind of get an understanding of your background and help you set up the course. And then there's also potential coaching opportunities, and all of this is free for the beta testers, by the way. That's not paid. So if you want to kind of get in early, now's a good opportunity. Just send me an email, brooklyn.myers@dockyard.com.
Gotcha.
Just say, hey, hey, it's my name, not my name, your name, obviously. Interested in Dockyard Academy, what's next? Something like that. And I'll send you a link to schedule up a meeting with me.
I request people to answer the poll. I have opened few poll questions.
Is there a poll?
Yeah, there is a poll. 3 questions.
Do you want me to answer these questions?
Not you,
Am I not
but
allowed in the poll?
audience.
I'm not allowed to answer the poll. Damn.
Where's the poll? It's in Google Meet?
I think if you go to activities, polls, and then so it's the little like triangle, square, circle button that's activities in the bottom right corner of Google Meet. And then it has polls, and then it has the
Gotcha.
Hope you're enjoying today's session. I think this is anonymous, so if you didn't, I think you're allowed to answer honestly.
Use Livebook before? No.
And should we use Livebook for future meetups? I hope so. I really hope that all of you thought that was cool and want to incorporate Livebook into your day-to-day. I find it's become a constant tool. I use it for pretty much any time I just want to quickly scratch up some Elixir code, and it's super, super useful.
Okay, so how do you use Livebook for teaching? Do you open Livebook in separate tabs? Any font size? Like, how does it go for you?
Yeah, so I have essentially a much bigger version of what we just saw, where you go to the Dockyard Academy, you clone that onto your computer. It's a a few different things. It has utility project alongside it, as well as all of the different live MD files. There's exercises and reading material. The reading material is interactive, so we'll cover some concept, like let's say we're covering basic operators or something like that, which is, I believe, like week 1 content. Excuse me. My apologies. You'll go through, read about the operators. There might be some little kind of mini exercises in there to just test your understanding. And because with Livebook, I can write Elixir, or I can even write tests, which is pretty cool. So I can run like XUnit directly from Livebook. So we can have exercises and reading material. It's I think one of the most interactive ways to learn Elixir out there. I really like it because, you know, when you're reading blogs, you'll see code examples, but something about having it actually run, even if in the blog you see the output, it's not quite the same as hitting the button and seeing the result for yourself. So it's super, super interactive.
And can Livebook be used for taking interviews, conducting interview of coding interview? So a person has to write the code.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why it couldn't. Now, if the interview needed to incorporate like building a Phoenix app, like there's obviously limitations. You can actually, funny enough, run Phoenix from Livebook. Like someone did that as kind of a like, hey, let's have fun, let's try this. I don't recommend it. It was more just to prove that it's possible. I even have an example in the course of like building a web server, super, super simple one from scratch inside of a Livebook, which is pretty fun. So you'd be limited in terms of like what kind of projects you could build. But if it's a simple coding challenge or something with like input, output, yeah, absolutely. You could totally use it. You can even, I haven't done much of this. And when I did try it, it was a little buggy. But I believe you can make your Livebook open for other people to join in. And you can have many people editing the same Livebook. I haven't done as much of that as I would like, but that could mean you could even, you know, go through it together, and maybe the interviewer could type up a suggestion, or, you know, so there's sky's the limit. Livebook is really cool. They're putting a lot of really cool stuff into it.
One more question. Would you like to join us for future meetup, maybe after 2 months? If we invite you, will you join us?
As a guest or a regular member? I don't
As a
think I
guest.
can commit to regular attendance, but I would
As a guest.
love to come back as a guest. As a guest, cool. I'd love to come back as a guest. Yeah.
Like we are planning to have mock interviews of our group after we complete Gen stage, and we all are good. We are planning to invite few guest speakers who will ask us questions, and our group is going to answer them. And that way we know our skills, where are we falling down, and we brush at those part again.
I can try, certainly. I honestly don't know if I'm quite the right person for that task, because I have never been a hiring manager. I haven't led an Elixir team. So I don't 100% know if I'm the right person for it, but I'd be happy to take a stab at it. I'm sure we could get something useful going.
Yeah.
Or if you want a different topic or whatever, I'm happy. Arpan?
Yeah, I have a question about this beta curriculum repo. So the entire curriculum that listed in this README file, is it available as a live book in this repo? Like,
yeah. So if you follow the quick start, what you do is you open up the index file is called start.livemd. So once you have Livebook installed, you open up the project in your terminal, and then you run the command livebook server start.livemd. That opens up a big index that has all the files. The README is actually, it's difficult to keep that up to date. The actual Livebook index is more up to date because that has the actual files. The README is more just a demonstration of where the content is going to go. Like I said, it's very beta. All of it is work in progress. I think I'm in the middle of completing week 6 of the content right now. And there's going to be 12 weeks, the last 2 being dedicated to a capstone project. So there's still lots to do. But yeah, you can run it locally, and then you'll see all of the different files that you can run from that index. And you just follow them one by one. They're separated into reading and exercises. So you read about the subject, and then you complete some related exercises.
all in the same live book, the exercises as well?
Yeah, so that's the nice thing about having those indexes, is it makes it easier, so you don't need to like there's a view, I didn't show it, where you actually can open like basically a file explorer in Livebook and then go through your computer to open up separate LiveMD files. Having that index makes that much more convenient because you just hit the button and then it goes.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you.
Cool. Yes, Sandesh, I'm sorry, I know we're going late. I'm very happy that all of you continue to have questions. This is a ton of fun. If you do have more and we're not able to get to everything, just my DMs are always open.
Our meetups are very interactive. We experiment a lot. Like on Friday, we have some exciting talk from one of our members of our group. He has been working using supervisors, and he discovered something wow. Then two guys, they had a session call, and they were experimenting how to fix it, and they have something new for us to show.
Awesome.
All our questions are in this way and out of questions.
Yeah. All right. I'm about to drop off now. Thank you so much, Brooklyn, for taking time out. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Goodbye, guys.
Take care. If any of you, by the way, I am preparing a talk for ElixirConf. So if any of you have feedback on this or thoughts or want to share anything that could help improve it for that, I'd really appreciate it.
Should I stop the recording, Brooklyn?
Yeah, I think this is absolutely. Bye, YouTube.